Dungeons & Dragons 5e has no standard rule to account for this, something being on fire for more than 6 seconds at a time. And let me be clear that the solution we're going to talk about is not an update from 1D&D. It actually stems from back in early 2017, when I was only about a year and a half into my discovery of TTRPGs, and I didn't want to buy the 5e books, so I wrote my own RPG. It had a few more conditions that I felt were missing from the 5e basic rules, including a flame. All attacks and checks have disadvantage and take 1d4 fire damage per round. Yeah, I wasn't yet familiar with the language of 5e books when I wrote that, so in this video, we're going to create a new condition for burning, based on the scraps of rules that do currently exist in D&D 5e for this effect. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing D&D together, and the reason I think D&D needs a fun and simple burning mechanic is that I vastly prefer to run games where there is no distinction between magical fire and elemental fire. It's all just fire, and it all burns the same way. Same goes for lightning damage being more conductive on metal or wet surfaces, and cold damage icing up the target. I like this style because it allows spellcasters to be way more creative with way fewer spells. But that's not how it works in 5e. Look at the Produce Flame cantrip. One action to cast, and a flickering flame appears in your hand. Not over your head, or on your foot, or before your eyes, in your hand. But okay, that's still pretty awesome. The flame remains there for the duration, 10 minutes, and harms neither you nor your equipment. Okay, nice, you can't be burned by your own fire, but while you're just holding it, neither can anything else. Rules as written, while this flame is in your hand, it's really just a light. There are no effects for burning anyone or anything. Burning can only happen if you hurl the flame at a creature within 30 feet of you. Not at the kindling you set up for a campfire, not at the dry thatch roof above you, not even at a red barrel filled with black powder, only at a creature. And on a hit, the target takes 1d8 fire damage. But even if that target is holding an unlit torch, technically none of their equipment or really even any part of the target creature will catch on fire. And that is flat out counterintuitive to what a new player should expect to happen, because that new player knows how fire works, and it completely breaks immersion and limits the player's imagination when the DM has to say, oh yeah, that fire spell can't actually catch anything on fire. However, there are a couple exceptional rules in 5e where you can actually burn stuff. Currently, there are 35 spells that can do fire damage, 11 of which can affect creatures and or objects around the target, and 2 of those spells are written to burn the target on subsequent turns. Immolation, which is a really cool spell for 9th level wizards and sorcerers, and Searing Smite, a low-level spell for paladins and specifically Forge Domain clerics. Since low levels are the ones that people actually play, let's check out Searing Smite. The target takes 1d6 fire damage, and at the start of each of its turns until the spell ends, the target must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 1d6 fire damage. On a successful save, the spell ends. If the target or a creature within 5 feet of it uses an action to put out the flames, or if some other effect douses the flames, such as the target being submerged in water, the spell ends. This is a pretty solid mechanic for how I think burning should work. And unlike my old homebrew rule, it explains how to extinguish the fire. And that's not the only one. The elemental monster, a Magmin, automatically ignites creatures and flammable objects with their touch attack, and until a creature takes an action to douse the fire, the target takes 1d6 fire damage at the end of each of its turns. And similarly, Alchemist's Fire from the equipment section can also be used against a creature or object. On a hit, the target takes 1d4 fire damage at the start of each of its turns. A creature can end this damage by using its action to make a DC 10 dexterity check to extinguish the flames. Pretty nice, but these last two are a little weird rules as written because they technically require a creature to use an action to extinguish the flames. So just moving into water or even a torrential downpour of rain technically wouldn't put out the flames, but any dungeon master should obviously rule otherwise, so we can't really fault the designers for that. Rather, we should give them more praise for Searing Smite concisely including that some other effect can douse the flames. Searing Smite is also great because the affected target is just making a con save at the start of their turn to see if they take damage or end the condition. It's good to give this opportunity at the start of the target's turn because it gives them a chance to avoid this extra damage, and just requiring a saving throw is really smart too. We do not want an NPC with merely a torch or the firebolt cantrip to be able to repeatedly ignite your PCs and force them to use up their actions dousing the flames turn after turn after turn. Fire should be more dangerous in 5e, but not that dangerous. So first, we need to establish what causes this burning condition. And I'd say when a creature or flammable object is hit by an attack, spell, or other effect that deals fire damage, the target must make a DC 10 dexterity saving throw, or ignite, and become burning. Objects automatically fail saving throws against this condition. This way, anything that does some fire damage would have the chance to ignite the target, though not a guarantee unless the target is an object that cannot defend itself. And I chose a dexterity save to represent a quick attempt to pad out the flames, but now the actual condition. A burning creature has disadvantage on ability checks and concentration checks, because just like I did back in 2017, I think being on fire should make some things difficult, particularly focusing on using a skill or maintaining a spell, and if you agree, please give this video a thumbs up. Then, at the start of each of its turns, a burning target must succeed on a DC 10 dexterity saving throw or take 1d4 fire damage. On a success, or if a creature uses an action to extinguish the flames, or if some other effect douses the flames, the condition ends. And this part is a little weird because the target can be an object, and objects don't really have turns, but that's literally what it says in the 5e rule for Alchemist Fire, so I'm cool with it. Also, only 1d4, because like I said earlier, I don't think this should be very powerful. It just needs to convey some of the danger that we all know should be presented by fire. But do you think it should be more powerful, or that the DC to avoid it should be higher? Let me know in the comments. And yes, if you've been following my 5e weapons project thing that I'm very slowly working on, this burning condition is a small part of it, because we're going to introduce 1 or 2 weapons with a new incendiary property. So if that sounds cool, check out this video about other cool weapon rules I'm working on. Thank you for your support, and keep building. Holy shit. That match just broke and almost lit my carpet on fire. Let's do that again.